You hold it,
Okay.
and then you just do it.
Oh. Gravity assisted. Yay!
Thank you.
How's that? Better?
I told you he does everything.
He broke it, I think. You have to buy it.
If you break it, we
Pete's
buy
broke
it.
the studio, that's it. We're done. Episode 20, that was your last.
So welcome everyone. Episode 20 of the orthohub C1 Do1 podcast. Pete, what's it all about?
It's something that's always been a bit of a mystery to me. Diversity and inclusion. It's a topic that's super woke and trendy right now. But what actually is it? And what does it look like when it's done well? Does it actually matter? Is it a passing trend, which something we should be looking to bake into our behaviour and culture over the next 5 to 10 years, or is it just a passing fashion? Is it actually good for a corporation, a business, an NGO, a representative body to be diverse and inclusive, or is it just one of those tick boxes we need to, one of those hurdles we need to jump because it happens to be hot right at the moment? I'd love to know the answers to these things, and we got Hani and we got Lucy here to help us with that.
We're going to learn a lot more by the end of this. I think the first thing we're going to do is just to address the elephant in the room, which is that so we are very grateful to
What, that we've got a new sign?
We've got a new sign, yeah.
Okay, I'm glad we got that out of the way.
Just for scale, there you go. I was expecting it to be much, much bigger. It's not the first time in my life I've been disappointed. Now, the elephant in the room is, so we at OrthoHub are very grateful to Dupuis Synthes and Johnson & Johnson because they have supported us. And the fact is that if it were not for their support, we would not have any of this equipment, we would not be in this place, we would not be able to do the orthopedic decision-making videos, the surgical approaches videos that are coming, the OrthoHub stories that have really made a big impact. So from that point of view, it's been great for their support. We're grateful. At the same point, I want to make it clear that they have been excellent in as much that they've given us full editorial control. They've not asked us to talk about any particular implant, to talk about any shiny new MacGuffin. In fact, if anything, the first webinar they were itching to get involved with was the IODA webinar about creating a diverse and inclusive community within global orthopedics, and we had speakers from America, Canada, UK, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Australia, and Alex Small was instrumental in that, so thank you, Alex. And so it was interesting, so it wasn't that this is an advertorial in any way. And similarly, we at OrthoHub are very much committed to diversity and inclusion. It's something that we've been collaborating with, I mentioned IODA, who the International Orthopedic Diversity Alliance. We've worked with the World Orthopedic Concern. And also, we've been really committed to making sure that at least 25%, if not 50% of all our webinar panels have been female. So I think something we're trying to live in our actions too. So I think it's a good mix. So we've got two guests today. I'm going to first, was that okay?
That was a great little intro. Yeah, well done. Very nice.
I could hear you getting a bit emotional.
No, no, that was good.
No, it's so we'll come back.
Good at freewheeling. I was very impressed with that.
Thank you. So we have two guests. Our first guest today is Hani Abouhalka. Hani is the company group chairman for Johnson & Johnson, or J&J as we like to call them, medical devices company in EMEA. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yep. What does EMEA stand for again?
Europe, Middle East and Africa.
Right. So that's basically everywhere except America.
No, and
And
Asia Pacific.
Okay. Oh, that's okay.
No. So Pete's showing up his limited knowledge of world geography.
And Latin America.
That's, yeah.
Okay.
And Antarctica.
But other than that, it's everywhere but America.
And Hani is responsible for J&J's medical device businesses, which encompass surgical technology, orthopedics, cardiovascular, and specialty solutions. Hani holds a bachelor's degree in biology from Arizona State University and a master's degree in international business from Thunderbird. That's such an amazing name.
Good name.
Thunderbird, which is the Garvin School of International Management.
Oh, I thought that was that like sweet sherry one used to drink before going out and getting, when you're a student, you drink a bottle of Thunderbird, and that would get you in the mood before going out to whatever
not
disco
to be
it was.
confused with world famous business school. And Hani is the executive sponsor of the Women's Leadership and Inclusion Employee Resource Group. He's a board member of the Johnson & Johnson Foundation. I looked him up. He's actually a big bloody deal.
He is seriously big cheese.
And a charity responsible for managing J&J's community impact programs. So, Hani, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I've worked out from your timelines that basically you've moved from, at some point you've been in the US, Lebanon, Benelux, UK. You're an international man of mystery. What are you running from?
My mom would tell you from getting married,
Right.
but that's about to change. So
Oh, wow.
Oh, fantastic! Congratulations.
You finally lost.
yeah. No, to be honest, I've been privileged to have a chance to go live and experience different cultures, different work environments, and for that, I'm thankful for the opportunities and the experiences along the way. So it's been amazing.
Fantastic. So can you just give us? So obviously, I've talked about some of the your achievements there and some of the places you've studied, but just give us an idea of kind of where you grew up and how your career's kind of developed.
Well, the story goes back to where I was born. I was born in Lebanon at the start of the Civil War. And growing up in that part of the world, if you cannot be God, being doctor would have been the second most amazing thing to be. And throughout my childhood, my mom's dream, everyone's dream was for me to become a doctor. So when the time has come, we went to the States. I did pre-med, and the idea was to become a doctor. And that was changed last minute because in my last semester before going to medical school, one of my professors asked me to come to his office, and he's like, "Are you sure you want to be a doctor?" And I said, "It's been my dream." He's like, "Are you sure?" I said, "Maybe." He's like, "Are you sure?" And I told him, "Well, it's an amazing thing to be able to do, but I'm not sure if it's the right thing for me." He said, "Well, listen, being a doctor is such an amazing and incredible responsibility, but you can, if you love healthcare, but you don't want to be a doctor or don't have the time takes to become an amazing doctor, might as well maybe finish your pre-med, get an MBA, and then join a healthcare company." And that's what I did. I didn't go to medical school. I did an MBA, and then I joined J&J 21 years ago. And I've been with them since, and I've been very lucky.
And what sort of doctor do you think you would have been? Do you think that was a right and proper decision, or do you look back with a bit of regret? Or
I don't regret this because I think having the chance to work with nurses, doctors throughout this period has been incredible in different cultures and different countries, trying to make an impact along with doctors and nurses and health physicians. The dream was to be a neurosurgeon. That was my mom's dream for me. I've always wanted, if I had continued, I would have wanted to be a surgeon.
turns out brain surgery isn't actually brain surgery, if you know what I mean. It's not quite as hard as it looks, I think.
But it's so cool when someone asks you what do you do, and you're like, I'm in.
That alone is worth it.
It's not rocket science, is it?
It's not rocket science, though.
So yeah, that's the story.
And so when you, and then as you've joined J&J, I take it that's where with each, you've kind of, as you've got promoted along the way, have you moved to different?
Yeah, I mean, I've
groups within?
been in our medical device group since I joined. I moved different geographies. So as you mentioned, I worked in the Middle East. I worked in Benelux, in the UK, regional or global roles, and it's in all our different businesses. So we have in the surgery group, in orthopedics, and cardiovascular. And although the job's been different responsibility, few things never changed. Our culture is very strong as a company, and that's something that when people ask me, how did you manage to work in different countries, different cultures, we have a thing called the credo, which really it's our universal set of values that doesn't matter where you are, what language you speak, this is something that brings us together. And second, which is as important, if not more important, it's being, and you do this better than anybody, and I wanted to thank you for all you've done over the last 18 months, because when it comes to service, having a chance to work with physicians and nurses everywhere across these countries is very inspiring. I'm always grateful when I go talk to my friends. A job is a job, but when you go back knowing that your work makes a difference is quite important, and I'm very, very thankful for that.
Yeah, no, hopefully one day we'll find out what it's like to make a difference.
You know what it's like to make a difference, someone's knee stability.
Well, to be honest, I mean, I personally always know the value, the difference you guys make, but the last 18 months have, if anyone had any doubt about what people in your position or anyone working in the system is huge, because people always thought healthcare is important. The last 18 months, I think people have realized that it's not just important, it's as critical as anything else. It's a difference between life and death, and
I think we've appreciated that as well. You know, certainly within like a surgical group, when you look around at your colleagues, I think it's made us respect our other hospital workers more than ever.
I mean, my sister is a nurse, and I've always known what the work that goes into being a nurse or a physician. But when it's in good days, it's great. When it's crisis, I think it's. We were witnessing history. I think when this is all over, we look back. The science piece will be incredible, but the sacrifices that people have done in the front lines is just short of incredible. So thank you.
as much as I'd like to take credit for it all, yes, I similarly, our anaesthetic colleagues, our nursing colleagues have been phenomenal.
Yeah.
Our other guest
Is Lucy Morrisey.
Lucy.
Hello.
Hello.
Nice to see you both.
Lucy, I've got a bio in front of me, which is a little bit wordy, if I'm honest. But we know Kash and I know Lucy very well. She was a general manager, and then she was a divisional manager, and then she was a very senior manager at Royal London.
She was our boss.
She was our boss, basically.
Can you imagine how much joy
years.
you would get managing Pete and I? Must be wonderful.
It's a constant joy.
Yeah.
So I'll try and put something together here.
Thanks.
She was proudly educated. So because you're a northerner, proudly educated at a northern comprehensive school. So the proudly bit is you spend so long down in the south, feeling feeling that the northern thing was something that we look down upon. We really don't.
No, absolutely not.
Great.
Sheffield
Sheffield.
Steel, the Blades.
Great. Proudly educated, Northern Comprehensive School, followed by the London School of Economics, Manchester and Birmingham Business School, and most recently at Harvard Business School in their professional education in value-based healthcare. As I say, you were working, you came through the NHS management training scheme. You then went to PwC for a bit, their finance and management consultancy bit, and then you came back to the NHS, and then you were general manager, and then you were divisional manager, and then you were like almost like queen of the entire hospital. And then you stayed with us for a bit, and then you went to King's. You did the same thing, and now you are a director in the Johnson & Johnson Strategic Capabilities team, working on building services and solutions that add value beyond product sales.
There you go. You got it, Pete.
And
Nailed it.
You're also the Women's Leadership Initiative Advancement Pillar Lead for UK and Ireland.
I am.
Fantastic. But is it fair to say that you miss us?
Every day,
Yeah.
Cash, every day.
Because you were saying you regret joining Johnson & Johnson. And
Did she?
I don't think I ever said that.
She never said that.
Hani,
But we miss her.
Hani, I have to level with you here. I think there is a degree of anxiety. Lucy's carrying a degree of anxiety going into this event.
What are these guys going to say about me?
What are they going to say that's going to make me lose my job at Johnson & Johnson?
We are loose cannons. But, no, Lucy, when you were with us, it was a pretty turbulent time, because I remember you were the Silver Command for the cyber attack and the London Bridge terrorist attack.
I was
right?
indeed, yeah.
And then you went to Johnson & Johnson, and then there was a worldwide pandemic for which they had a vaccine. Now, I'm no conspiracy theorist, but it almost seems awfully coincidental that these kind of things follow you around.
Disasters follow me,
Yeah.
yeah. No, there was a point in time where when you found out I was on call with you, people would try and go home as quickly as possible.
So what have you got planned for us next, Lucy? Is it like releasing dinosaurs into the wild or reversing the Earth's magnetic field?
No plans, Cash.
No plans.
Everything's going to be okay.
Good to know.
Lucy, tell us what it takes. What is the mindset? Why would someone go into hospital management? Why would someone aspire to that? It just seems like the most thankless task on earth.
No, it's a fair point. It is a very hard job, and I, deep respect for clinical colleagues, but also managerial colleagues across the NHS particularly. It's a really, resource constrained system. It's very challenging day to day. You get to manage orthopaedic surgeons, all those kind of things that might challenge one in the job. But I think it is similar to what Hani said. It is fulfilling in a really kind of special way, in that it's hard to not sound insincere, but I did deeply enjoy my time in NHS management. You get to see patient impact, you get to have that kind of overall oversight of everything that goes on in a hospital, and it is quite, it's fulfilling, but it's also got a level of pace about it. There's an adrenaline that kicks in when you're trying to make a hospital work on a day-to-day basis. Colleagues that you work with, people in healthcare are very committed to what they do. So yeah, it's actually a really great job, despite being really quite hard.
Doctors are pretty pompous at times, though, aren't they?
Speak
Pompous
for yourself.
and difficult,
Speak for yourself.
and just very, very pleased with themselves. Do they not? It must be pretty exasperating at times, mustn't it?
No, I don't think so. Although I did have a joke when I left that you see a bit of everything. In that I was going to write a book, I might still write this book, which was going to be called Doctors, Surgeons and Other Species, because I think you get a real breadth of characters, a real breadth of different approaches, and I think But I'm fascinated by people. I think medical people are a fascinating bunch.
And clearly you've never really left because you can still see the hospital from your flat.
Exactly. Every day I can see you.
Could not tear yourself away.
No.
But given that you manage, all of us, who was the hardest person to manage?
It's got to be you, Kash, surely.
It can't be me. Although you did never sign off my job plan.
No, and I never will.
Who would
I never
sign
would
that
have.
off?
Hardest working man in medicine is what they say. Not me. I don't like to talk about it. Hani, would you mind explaining, please, for Pete's benefit?
Yeah.
What is the difference between things like diversity, inclusion, equity?
From the beginning?
Let's start with diversity. If you don't mind.
Please keep it simple. Imagine you're talking to a 12-year-old. 10-year-old.
Who's not toilet trained.
That's going to make it harder. No,
I used to wet the bed a bit.
For me, there's a foundational way of looking at it, which is the world looks a certain way. And you need to reflect how the world looks in the way you do business, the way you interact socially, the way you go about your daily life. And when that happens, it's not ever an issue. But when it doesn't happen, that's where the flag starts coming. But for me, it's when I talk to my team, it's as foundational as we need to reflect and resemble the markets we're in, the people we deal with. One, because it's the right thing to do, but two, it's actually a reflection of how people want to look at you from the other side. And for me, that balance of understanding how the world looks and how you look as whether it's a company, whether it's a team, whether it's whatever the lens is, just looking like the world we live in. It's as basic and as foundational as that. Now, there is a moral argument to it, but we're not going to go there now. It's just before we go there, the research says when you do have diverse teams that look like the world we live in, you're going to be more successful. And for that, that's a great starting point. So that's the diversity piece of it.
And I guess for us as doctors, the fact is that the more doctors look like the population that they treat, the better health outcomes that people will achieve and the more engagement there will be.
100%. And there is many examples. One, when you have teams, if you have diverse teams, maybe the communication will be a bit tougher, but that team will be stronger. And we know that when you're going in doing 10-hour surgeries or 8-hour surgeries, having highly effective, diverse teams will always end up with better results. So that's one. Two, about insights. When you're looking at innovation, for example, if we don't have the feedback and the insights from diverse surgeons, we know the habits of certain surgeons in the UK might be very different than in Asia. And understanding that early on from an insight perspective, that gets a better outcome from getting the right tools, the right devices, and the right outcomes. So whether it's on the service level or it's on the innovation side, having diverse teams, diverse insights is always going to end up with better results.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing is that if you are diverse, then you are employing from the whole talent pool and you're getting the best people. Whereas if you're just taking people into Pete's school, then you're going to get a certain number of people in any school. And the fact is, if you're picking up, the challenge of this thing is making it sound like I'm not picking on Pete the whole time. But but essentially I am picking on Pete.
No, but someone needs to give the example. If you have a manufacturing plant, would you want to run it with 50% of the workforce? You would never want to do that. So when it comes to gender, for example, it's the more people that are involved, the better that plant will be. So including more is a big thing to getting to that.
Okay, can I put a counter argument back to you, which might be some say, well, look, we've got this plant, it's working really well, it's totally awesome, it's not remotely diverse. Everyone is one particular look, whatever that might be. We're not diverse at all, but it works really well. If it's not broke, why fix it?
Well, this is the counter argument to anyone who doesn't want to build diverse teams because. Yeah. Granted, some people tell you it's easier to manage a team that looks, thinks, jokes like you. That's a starting point. But life is not about what's easy. Life is about, first and foremost, when you have the research to reflect that these teams will be more reflective of the market you're in, you'll have better insights, you'll have different ways of looking at solving problems. And then what you think is working, when you compare it to what it could be, that's where the sweet spot is, because you think it's working, but then when you have the results to show that actually you could be X more innovative, you could be X more successful, But for me, even if you put that all aside, I've had as you said in the beginning, I've had the luxury of working in different diverse cultures. I showed up, didn't even know the language. When I reflect about these times, I grew as a person. So forget the business success, forget what could happen. I believe the world is more connected now than ever before. I believe if we go through life thinking that what you believe or what you look like is the only lens to look at the world, you're missing such a beautiful picture of the world because you're stuck in that simple lens of what you think is right, missing out on 10 different other ways of looking at the world. And it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, and the fact is, if everyone's had the same background, same experience, you're going to be lacking innovation. If you've got different viewpoints, you'll get new ways of thinking.
Lucy, how are we doing in the NHS, would you say, with diversity and inclusion? How are we doing?
So I think the NHS is a really mixed picture in that when you look at the stats, the different professional groups actually show a really different levels of diversity and inclusion as well, actually. So, my experience of the medical world actually is a fairly diverse group of people, from lots of different cultures. Particularly the NHS has brought people in from all over the world that work in it, and obviously that's an amazing thing. If you then look in the senior ranks, it's a bit less like that. So nursing's a really good example. You'll see huge amounts of big female workforce, but actually in the senior ranks, much more males in the senior ranks of nursing. If you look at management, we actually do quite well in the NHS in terms of female management, but there still are many lacking areas of diversity at the very kind of top and boards, etc.
Yeah.
So I think it is a really mixed picture. I think it's something that I always thought was a great facet of the NHS in that it manages to have that full range of diversity. Whether it goes all the way through the system and the ranks is perhaps a slightly different picture, but the NHS is hugely committed to diversity and inclusion from national policy, and you see lots of hospitals now that are really focusing on initiatives that really try and meet some of the challenges that they face in those things around seniority.
Can you just define the terms for me? Is inclusion the thing that leads to diversity? Is one leads to the other, or are they separate things?
So I think they're slightly separate things, aren't they? I think the three facets, diversity, equity and inclusion, and actually for me the equity one is really crucial in that what you're not trying to do is you're not trying to say that everyone is equal and you're doing the same thing for everyone. You're trying to say actually that the diversity of the difference in people is something that brings a huge amount to the equation. So addressing those differences and being equitable to people in terms of what they need to flourish in any environment, that's the thing that really allows you to kind of bring those three things together, that you've got that diversity, you're treating people in an equitable way, and you've got an inclusive environment that allows those things to all come together.
Well, the best way, just to add to that, Lucy, the best example I've heard being mentioned, diversity is when you're invited to a party. Inclusiveness is to be asked to dance at the party. So that's when you
don't want to see me dance.
My
wife has banned me from dancing.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But at least you feel you're included.
Yeah. That's right.
So diversity is about the makeup and representation kind of of an entity, and then inclusion. So think about it, inclusion. Are you included?
Yeah, of course.
Are you at the Are you at the table? Are you making decisions? Are your views being taken on board? Are they,
Understood.
And that's key, because there's so many teams who tell you, well, look at me, I'm the most diverse team ever. You show up to their meeting, and out of 10 diverse team members, 2 people control all the discussion, control the decisions. Well, that's great on paper that you have a diverse set of people around, but that's not really an inclusive environment. And you don't get to that sweet spot of where the magic happens unless these people feel that, 1, they're appreciated, 2, that they're able to speak and contribute, and to the point you mentioned, where actually they can also contribute with the ideas, and that's where the real magic happens.
Right. So the inclusivity element is a lot more subtle than just having the people in the room.
Correct.
Yeah, because I think following on from that, if you've got a very diverse group, that's diversity. But if no one's included, or only one person who's the old white man gets to make the decision, then all of a sudden that's not inclusion. Everyone else, then it's tokenism.
Yeah.
Then you've just got people there just for the sake of it, to say we've got them. So you've got to have people involved in decision making.
Equity? Help me with that.
So equity is addressing what people need in order for them to be included. So, you know, you might have seen some of the pictures. You see the diagram that shows, you know, you might have someone that's reaching for a tree of apples, and you would reach, if you were smaller, you would need maybe a higher ladder to reach those apples. If you were taller, you could reach them just by hand.
Actually, that sparks something off, actually, because equality, just thinking about our example here, which I forgot to get my cushion. So equality would be giving us both a cushion, your head's out of shot, and equity would be giving me a cushion because I'm not as tall as you.
Understood.
Nailed it.
Everyone gets the opportunity to
We
be
are
on the
actually-
We'll have
mic.
to give you 2 cushions.
That's inclusive as well. You
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
to speak.
We are actually about the same height. It's just that Kash has got the most terrible posture.
I do slouch.
Slouch is
I
like-
really slouch. Yeah. I'm gonna work at it. So that's fantastic. So I'm loving those. Definitions. Are you?
Yeah, no, I'm
with
happy
those?
now. I'm happy now. So equality is giving people the tools to be included. Yes. So they
Yes.
so you can hit that sweet spot that you're describing, so that everyone who is in the room is feeling like they are on a level, rather than it's still they're being, because you often see this in what appear to be diverse groups. You look around your staff members, you go, well, that couldn't be more diverse than that. But if the power mongers are relatively small, then actually it isn't.
Hani, how did your interest in diversity and inclusion arise? Because it's not a typical corporate thing one would think of.
I was thinking before we started, there are two sides to this. First, from a personal perspective, if you look at where I come from, if you had told my parents I'll be doing this job at this time, odds would have been against this. I've been blessed to have worked in a company that respected and drove that concept of truly believing and building diverse and inclusive teams. And I also have had the luxury of having amazing bosses throughout, where they did not judge me based on my accent or where I came from or how I looked. They judged me on the work I did, the people I developed, ethical leadership, believing in our credo and believing in our values. So for me, the same opportunities I got, I want to make sure that others get it, whether it's on any issue when it comes to diversity and inclusion. So that's for me the personal drive to why this is so important. Second, I do believe if in our case there's a business, the research is overwhelmingly to say that diverse and inclusive teams are more high performing, they do better work, they create better cultures, it's more fun, they make a bigger difference in the markets they work in, and there is thousands of research on that piece. And from a business perspective, I'll be stupid not to drive that, and if you know that this is what makes you more successful from a business lens. Last but not least, I also believe, and this comes also from my upbringing, there's a moral argument here. My father used to tell us since we were kids, there's no difference between anybody. And we all are born into this world, and one day we're all going to die. And that belief that people are all the same, it doesn't matter where you come from, what you do, where you grow up, how much money you have, or who you believe in, or any of that. That foundational belief, it's something that's important. And in this world, unfortunately, there are more people trying to convince us that we're not. And I choose to believe that we are. So these three are really some of the foundational issues why this is so important. Especially, you mentioned at the beginning, this is a trendy thing. I never saw this as a trendy thing. It is now because a lot of people are talking about it, rightfully so. But we're not going to change it just because it's important now. I think this is something that we all need to drive, to push yesterday, today, and tomorrow, because it's not going to go away. The world is as divided as ever, but hopefully
more than ever, I would suggest.
And hopefully people with like-minded people will fight to believe that that there's more that unites us than that divides us, and I believe in that.
It was interesting. One thing I had at my school, and my parents actually, it was my parents, not my school, take that back, is this saying that, at the end of the day, the king and the pawn go back in the same box. And that kind of harks to what you're saying there. I was going to take issue with something you said at the beginning, which was you said that it's woke. And I think the thing is, woke's an interesting term because it's a term that's being used increasingly, particularly in and it's almost seen as used as in a derogative way. I'm not saying you did, but people, when someone says something is woke, that basically is belittling it in some way almost.
It didn't start that way, did it?
No.
Woke started off as a righteous term,
Yes,
and has now been overused and has gone over the hump and is now on the downslope of its. It's not a term that you want to be associated with.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because someone on Twitter was saying the other day, he said, if someone, and now they're talking about deep woke. That's like the new thing. Like, are you deep woke? And someone said deep woke just means I'm not a dick. You care about other people, you care about humanity. But it is interesting how these words are changing, and then people start talking about snowflake, and and these terms are kind of being slightly weaponized in a way. And I like Hani's approach on life there, which is that everyone should be treated, in the way you'd wish to be treated.
Yeah. Is the inclusive, diverse message being abused at all? Is it being used or taken in a way that's disingenuous, do you think?
Well, like any other topic, the minute people take it and turn it to either a cultural issue or a political issue, it takes away from the true essence of what it is. Again, in my frame of thinking, it's very foundational. Either you believe in the morality of people being equal and doing what needs to be done and have that, or even if you don't believe that and just it's a business imperative that actually yields better results. And from that angle, I tend to not to engage in political / debates because the only thing you'll do is divide people more and drive them further. For me, I come in from, again, I put my business lens on here. When I talk to my teams about this, like any other strategic business imperative we don't spend days and weeks and months idealizing the problem and admiring it and talking about it. If this is going to make us stronger, a better team, a better culture, more fun, better trust, I don't know anybody who doesn't want that. And if you don't, that's fine, then you can go somewhere else. But I don't think taking it to a place where it becomes what I believe versus what you believe and let's argue for the next 6 months is going to help either, because you're turning it to something that's not supposed to be, which is a political discussion, or I don't believe in that. I don't think that's how you drive change.
Yeah.
But I think it is what Pete was getting at, that every company now seems to have a diversity and inclusion policy. Every company. Even a lot of these tech startups have actually been found out to be incredibly toxic places to work. And so there is a thing that you mentioned, which is that are some companies doing it just because they think they should be doing it, or to protect themselves from some sort of criticism?
To be honest, that's a great point. And I cannot judge for all the intent of all the companies. And some of them might be doing it exactly to your point, because either they have to or they're under pressure. But for me, it's not what the reason is behind doing it. If it helps us build more diverse, inclusive companies that look like the world we live in, I'm okay with that. The danger is if you're not doing it in a way that is genuine and really addressing the core issues, you end up course correcting for a very short period of time when people are looking. And the minute you're not looking, it's like putting dust under the bed. And that's not going to address the issue. So for me, it has to be genuine. It has to be part of not just this is important topic for the week or for the day. Is to have enduring programs that actually make a difference on the long term. And that's where my concern would be, because it cannot be just let's do it for today because someone asked us the question. That would not help anybody or anytime.
So just out of interest, how long have J&J been doing this?
I mean, as I told you from the beginning, the name of the programs have changed. But for example, the employee resource group, we call it, that I'm the executive sponsor, is around women leadership. And I've been with the company 21 years. I know they've been active, engaged in different things to help when it comes to women leadership for the 20 years I've been with the company.
Right.
And the work might have changed, the activities might have changed, the chapters in different countries might have done different work. But the essence of it, I mean, Lucy can talk about the advancement pillar. That was there, the sponsorship, the role modeling. And it's been on for 20 years. Does it mean it has to stop? No, it means it has to get better and we continue the journey. We're not where we need to be, but definitely we're on the right track.
No, it's interesting because I would say, honestly, it's probably registered on my landscape in the last 2 years or so.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say it wasn't something we'd really heard about before?
No, it feels like a recent thing to me.
Yeah. Okay, so you've been in it for a while then. That's legit.
Lucy, I know it's a totally unfair question, but can you give me for instance of a time where you were involved in a group that was not diverse, where you were part of that group but it wasn't a particularly diverse group, and you felt that it was that lack of diversity that was paralysing or preventing that group from being better than the sum of its parts?
Yeah, sure. So I think actually it's probably a common experience of everyone in facets of things that they've done through their career. So I don't know what I mean. I presume some people find it more pervasive if they're in minority groups, and so it happens more regularly. But in my experience, sometimes when made my way through my career as a female in a management structure or in the clinical world, and you sometimes find yourself in rooms whereby there is presumptions that are made because you're the female. Maybe you're the one taking the notes. Maybe you're nipping out for the tea. And I have had experience of those things whereby I've felt that I'm not fully in the room as a full member of that discussion. And that's challenging. And I think, a lot of younger women going up through the ranks in their career will have experienced some of those things. And Hani mentioned the work that I lead in J&J around the advancement pillar, and we pick up those issues and we seek the experiences of our employees to challenge some of those things that they might struggle with in their working practice. So I would say there's been lots of times when I've experienced those things and I've seen and heard from other people that they have experienced them. And I suppose that the point for me there is, what do you do about that? How do you create scenarios whereby you feel like you're at the table, that you are a valid member of the team, that your contribution is part of the whole, and that it's really valued.
And how did you how have you found yourself? How have you adapted that and barged your way into the room? Like I want to be part of this room, part of the decision making chain. How did you get into that?
I feel like you're thinking of a particular time.
No, I'm really not. I'm really not.
One
One particular time.
No, but it's interesting, isn't it? So when we worked together, so you were clinical lead, I was general manager at that time. We are diverse between ourselves. We would bring a very different perspective.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate, actually, definitely my experience of working in orthopedics, that I always did feel quite included in decision making. Obviously, I was a boss, so I kind of helped.
She never brought around though, from what I remember.
That's not fair. That's not fair. But yeah, I think what I've often done is use my my commitment to the job. I think you would reflect I was very committed to my work. Let action speak for you. So you do a good job, you earn the right to be in a decision-making space, you earn the trust and the respect of your colleagues, and then that allows you to kind of be at the table.
When we look at female trainees, for instance, one thing we find is that a lot of the time that they, and you would have found this, I imagine, you have to be more assertive to make your voice heard, or to have be involved in a decision. But by being more assertive, all of a sudden you're accused of being bolshy or a bit uppity,
And that's just exactly what you described, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, there's a real balance there in how do you. There's a thing where in women's leadership, for example, a lot of women say that they don't want to have to act in a particular way. They don't want to behave in a way that's not authentic to themselves in order to get that place at the table. And actually, that's really valid in that, so-called male behaviours of being more, more forthright. It's not actually the case, is it? There's plenty of men and women who act in different ways. Yeah. But actually that is something that, that shouldn't be the case. You shouldn't have to act and behave a particular way.
But with men, so men are seen then as assertive, as leaders. Women doing the exact same thing are seen as bossy or, bolshy.
Yeah, and I think that, there's a place to challenge those things when when it's perceived in a particular way that behaviours are therefore negative because they're from a man or a woman. But yeah, I think one thing that we're perhaps not so good at is that challenge piece. So, how do you have that difficult conversation that actually that isn't the right way to do things, or have you considered that you might need to modify your behaviour? And I think to tackle these big issues, we have to get more comfortable with that challenge.
I mean, have you ever done that? I mean, I remember, we worked together a lot, and you would come out of meetings absolutely seething. Oh, I can't believe so-and-so said this or so-and-so said that. And you were absolutely, aghast at the behaviour you'd seen from whoever it happened to be. But as you say, challenging that, what's the forum? Do you do it in the meeting? Do you do it after the meeting? Do you not do it at all? Do you do it through a third party, some weeks later? What is the forum for challenging crass bad behaviour?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to that is it is different in every situation, isn't it? So some of a forum whereby you won't get the best outcome from challenging someone won't necessarily always be the right place to do it. I can think of numerous situations whereby I've had separate conversations with people about topics or their particular approach to things to address that challenge, not necessarily always in the total forum. Now, it's sometimes absolutely required to do that in a forum whereby everyone sees that that's happening, but not always.
And I must say that gender is kind of the most obvious thing that people look at when they look at diversity, but the fact is it's so many other things, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Hani, in your experience, how does diversity vary across the world? Diversity and inclusion and how people view it?
I think the good news of that is globally it's become now a topic where everyone is talking about it. I mean, it became even more of an issue based on the recent crisis in the US with the murder of George Floyd. It brought the whole race discussions to the forefront, and it gained steam globally, I would say. I do think there is genuine intent from different cultures, across the globe, to approach it with a lens of, if it makes us better, stronger, we should embrace this. We should try to make it more successful. So the intent is there. Now, the execution of that intent is different from region to region, country to country. We see a lot of swings up and down. And that's why I think at the core of it, from my personal opinion, driving to a place where people can show, because the danger is if you create an image of what is diverse or what is inclusive, and you say this is it, and people have to fit into that creates a precedent on its own, because that's not what diversity is all about. Mm-hmm. For me, it's about creating an environment where people know they can show up as their true selves, and they realize that the differences are to be celebrated. We complete each other. We're not there to lecture people of, this is my view of diversity and this is your view of diversity, because when we go there, that actually gets us to a place where we end up in a more restrictive view of it than what it really meant to be. So for me, it's great to see more people talking about it globally, different countries, different cultures. But as long as we drive to a place where people can be themselves, show up as the true themselves, I think that would be the sweet spot.
That's beautiful. I think I want to come and work for you. Pete, I'm off. Lucy, where's the form?
I'm not directing this question to either of you specifically, so please just pick it off. I've got this mental image when you talk about, when Kash said we're doing a diversity and inclusivity piece with Lucy and Hani, I just had this mental image, and I still got it, of a boardroom with, 8 or 12 people, mainly older white dudes, maybe not entirely white dudes, but mainly those, sitting round going, right, okay, we're on the agenda item of diversity and inclusivity. And that group mainly is earnestly wanting to be more diverse and inclusive. But they look at themselves and go, we really aren't that, are we? What do they do? What does that group... That must have happened many, many times and must still be happening now. I can think of multiple groups where they would have sat around, looked at each other and think, we're not very diverse, are we? What do they do?
So I think addressing who's in the room has to be, it has to be something that they then commit to, doesn't it? Because if you acknowledge that you aren't going to solve that problem yourselves, then you have to seek input from elsewhere, and whether that is commitment to making that room more diverse so that you don't get into that situation, or whether it is even, bringing in other opinions to have the discussion. I think there's lots of different tactics that you could take, and that's definitely something that you see definitely in our kind of context. We constantly seek to challenge who's in the room, what the conversations are being had. So a really good example is recruitment panels. So if you look around and your recruitment panel's not diverse, you are not going to diversely hire. Yeah. So making an absolutely concerted effort that you have to change that. So a commitment that your panel is going to be diverse will start to make you be able to change those situations. So I think it's a really active thing.
Yeah, just to add to this point, which is a great point. It has to start off having an honest discussion among that group of why we're going to do this and why we're choosing to go down that path. Because if it's just a tick exercise, it might work for a month, 6 months, but it will not drive a sustainable culture of true diversity and inclusiveness. So that's, for me, is the first, having that honest discussion of why we're doing this, and understanding that by doing it, we are creating a more successful, a better culture, a better company to be in, or a better environment to be in, period. So that's the first, the intent, honest discussion behind it. And then when to start the journey, there's a lot of specific proven methods to improve this. Lucy mentioned a huge one. We know that if you have a panel that is diverse, with at least 2 diverse candidates on the slate, the chances of hiring a diverse candidate dramatically increases. That's proven science. Taking out some of the biases on the interviewing process, there's a lot of experiments have happened in orchestras where at one point they said we can't find enough female musicians to play in orchestras. They made blind auditions. All of a sudden they've had the people they were looking for. We know that works, and it depends, but for that, it's a thing that works. We know role modeling works, meaning if I'm a certain group, when I see someone that looks like me, has been successful, I know their story, what they've been, that gives me an incentive to do more. So we know that works.
It's very much the whole thing. If you can't see it, you can't be it.
Yeah. Role modeling, we said, works. Sponsorship, we know sponsorship has a huge impact on saying, Peter, we're going to have 3 people or trainees. You're one of the best at what you do. Now use all your connections, do all your knowledge to make sure that these 3 talent are accelerated so they become as good as you are. So sponsorship, we know, works and can help with diversity. The last piece is it depends on where you are. If you look at the gaps, it could be in opportunities, could be in recruitment, it could be in communities where people don't have opportunities. Then you might have to do bigger programs of saying, well, the issue here, we need to help people in education early on. We need to give access to scholarships, etc. It depends on the range. But for me, it starts with the intent. It is hard work. But then doing it because you want to, because it makes it better, and that's why I go. For me, it's I've seen it when people try to do lip service to it, it doesn't work. It genuinely does not work. And
but it probably involves some of those older white dudes stepping away and say, guys, I think probably I need to be replaced by somebody else.
But see, this is where for me, it's not anybody replacing anybody, and I explained this to my team. If, for example, because the way people see it, they try to convince you that there is one job or one opportunity, and in the past it was going to a certain type, now it's going to go to a new type. And for me, that's such a limiting, small way of thinking. For me, if we're going to be successful, instead of having one opportunity, we're going to have 3 opportunities. And instead of having just one person look like in a certain way, we're going to have 3, and they're going to be diverse, and we're going to be more successful, and it's going to be more fun. So the minute you position it off, while certain group have now to sit on the side, that's not diversity and inclusiveness either. Yeah. We will not solve the problem by discriminating against certain group to advance another group. I just don't believe in that. I believe you build a process that's equitable, you create a process that's diverse, you create a culture that's inclusive, and you let people be their best, and I think that's where the magic happens. I really believe so.
Bringing it to orthopedics, I genuinely believe you'd have been an orthopedic surgeon, not a neurosurgeon. Once you'd started your training.
Yeah, you'd have given that up. No,
you'd have seen the light. But orthopedics usually comes at the bottom of diversity tables. I've got some figures here. At present, so officially 55% of medical students are female, but that number's going up hugely. But only 7% of consultants, 7% are female. there is some encouragement. It's about 20% of specialist trainees are female, but that's still an underrepresentation. And so the BOA published a diversity and inclusion strategy and an action plan with 5 key priorities last year. And so we know the panel. It was Caroline Hing, Debbie Eastwood, Fergal Monsell, Rob Gregory. I think there were others. I'm embarrassed. Apologies to anyone else who's listening. And they're really serious and committed about it. So they've basically got a strategy and an action plan. So, and I really, having been involved with the SAC, the Specialist Advisory Committee, there are real strong steps being taken in orthopedics. So I'm quite proud actually of what I'm seeing within orthopedics. I really think there is a change, and I think there's a generational change as well coming that's kind of helping facilitate that.
Yep. Okay, can I give another counter argument here? Just so we round the discussion. So boys and girls are different creatures, and you know.
Is this a story your mum had with you?
We are different creatures. We find different things interesting, and therefore different jobs will lend themselves, not necessarily exclusively, but they will lend themselves to being more male or female dominated, or more dominated by different cultures or people with a different backgrounds. So, for example, we're having some houses built outside our house. They've got a massive new block of houses. They look great. And one of them is a female bricklayer, and I've never seen a female bricklayer, and it's lovely to see her plopping up the bricks, but she is a minority. The vast majority of the people there are men, and it's just a job that kind of lends itself, I would imagine that even in 1,000 years' time, more men are lent to that job. Now, I may be wrong, but I feel that men and women drift towards different things, and therefore is it the case that in something like orthopedic surgery, you need to leave the door wide open for anyone of any culture, sex, or proclivity to come and join it. But at the same time, you have to accept that it will still be dominated by certain personality types because those are the people who are lent towards that thing.
I'm going to be very honest with you.
That was a bit of a ramble. I'm sorry.
No. I wholeheartedly disagree with you.
Great.
And I'll tell you why.
That's what you want.
Yeah, no, and I'll tell you why. Because this logic is why this is the exact logic why people defend teams or businesses or whatever it is that are not diverse and not inclusive. Exactly, because you listen to what you just said, it makes sense. I can tell you I'll be the worst bricklayer ever created. And I can tell you there are thousands who will be better than me. And last time I checked, I'm a man. So that for me is not the issue. The issue is when you start putting people in boxes early on and telling them this is what you can or cannot do and this is what you can or cannot do. Fundamentally, if we go back to a world where these are the work or the jobs that need to happen and give people the choice to pursue their passion, maybe you would love to be a cardiologist, maybe you'd love to be a bricklayer, maybe you'd love to be an orthopedic surgeon, but don't put obstacles from the beginning saying, well, knowing what you do is going to lean you to this route, because that's how predetermined decisions go and happen. For me, I met incredible men and women who can do anything they want based on whatever they choose to do. And I think if we create that belief from the beginning, even when the people are kids, and then if they end up being amazing trauma surgeons, great. If they end up being cardiologists or anything else, great. But let's not predetermine who does what or what. That's my...
And can I just add to that, Pete? Have you ever come across a really, really good female orthopedic surgeon?
Tons of them.
So to me, that in itself proves the point, in that even if you never get to 50-50, even if you never get to total equity or equality in the numbers, for every really good orthopedic surgeon that's a woman, they have to have had that opportunity to be it.
Of course.
And it goes back to your role modelling argument as well, doesn't it? That if you see people who look like you doing what you want to do, that drives you to do it.
Right.
You all know the story with a father is driving his son. They have a car accident. They rush them to the hospital. The son is in a very critical condition. They put him on the operating room table. The surgeon shows up and says, "I can't operate. This is my son." And people ask, "How could this be the son?" And then people will give you 10 different scenarios before they say, "Well, that's his mother." the father was with him in the accident. And that unconscious bias is limiting from the beginning, because we as people try to put boxes on certain issues and we live with them as facts. And the same way, my mom will never believe that I can do this job. I promise you, there are some, as you said, there are some incredible orthopedic surgeons. And for me, that person who's doing bricklayers, I promise you she's doing a much better job than I would ever do. So why limit people? Let them be who they can be, and then we'll celebrate them. It's there's no issues.
So Pete, given that you are the embodiment of white male privilege, no, listen. I imagine. Can I ask you? Honestly,
Go on.
I imagine this is slightly. Does this make you feel uncomfortable? This topic?
No, massively, of course.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing I was going to say, is that going back to that boardroom of white guys, I would predict that most. I think that as someone who when you have the idea of male privilege, white male privilege, people who tick the majority of those boxes. Public school educated, etc. People who tick all those boxes do feel a certain awkwardness around this topic. In fact, they might even feel like they're maybe being blamed, or they're being looked upon as though they're the problem. And I'm not saying they are, but I think that there is an awkwardness on that side, isn't there?
And I make sure I talk to everyone with that kind of thought, because this is the opposite of what we're trying to do. Because if we're gonna make significant change in this field, your contribution are as critical, as important as mine, and without you, I cannot do this. And that's why whether it's in our company or anybody, this cannot be work versus a certain group, because that's not inclusive. That's not how you build it. And you need to discuss this openly with people to say, if we're gonna make a difference in your hospital, in trauma, I guarantee you it's not gonna happen unless you're the first to be believing in this and no one else. So for me, it's not that they're part of what's uncomfortable or part of the issue. The complete opposite. I believe that these individuals will be part of solving this and creating a more diverse, inclusive culture. And if not, we're never gonna get there.
And I would, yeah. I mean, I totally agree. But I would say also, on top of that awkwardness, there's also, like, even goes down to the vocabulary that you use. I think people worry about what they're going to say. Is it going to be misread? Am I going to say something a bit daft or goofy? Just a few weeks ago, I was having a conversation with Martin Griffiths. Martin Griffiths, one of our, he's just got I think it was a CBE for his work in crime prevention. He's a vascular surgeon, Royal London trauma surgeon.
Knife stabbings, wasn't it?
Yeah. And he was explaining to me that, for example, to call him a man of colour is totally fine, and that's great. To call him a coloured man, totally unacceptable. And we all understand why that is. It's because it's the term that's been chosen by him and his community, and that's what he's decided is an okay thing to be called. But you can imagine, as the person calling him that, you're worried that you're going to use the wrong terminology. How do we try and get rid of that fear of speaking freely?
Well, this is a very difficult point, to be honest, because it doesn't just go addresses this piece. It comes across everybody. And for me personally, the way I approach it is, you'll be shocked how powerful it is, a discussion, to ask, to inquire, because at the end of the day, it's what makes someone comfortable. And for me, not making assumptions, asking, learning more about others, you'll be more ready to have these honest discussions. But again, at the core of it, it has to be not about the words itself. It's about how you believe behind the words, because words are important and they're critical because they have impact on other people. And I'm sure all of us have been called names, and that's fine. But at the core of it is just having that comfort to have that honest discussion, to know it. Because once you know it, if you want me to call you X, I'll call you X. It's not the end of the world for me. It's
of course.
It's a simple issue. But not knowing and then assuming, this is where the problems happen, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, we joked a little bit before about challenging people or challenging situations. And to me, it's not about not having the challenging conversation. It's about having a conversation with empathy and with good communication. So if you go into any of those situations whereby you are empathetic and you're communicating effectively, you're going to, most of the time be able to come out the other side of it with a good outcome. If you don't go in with that open mindset, thinking empathetically about what the other person might be feeling and communicating with them well, you're probably not going to get there.
And it's about putting yourself in the other person's shoes and in terms of understanding their point of view and what it'd be like to be them. I enjoy making you squirm, as you can tell. Across many podcasts, I've asked you some awkward questions. But the fact is, honestly, I want to say I'm proud of how you've grown over this time, because we've been having conversations. And
so patronising, isn't it? But it's true. It's true. I have grown.
I'm genuinely not being patronising here. On this one occasion, is it your birthday? But I'm saying, as we've had conversations, you've understood me, my beliefs, other things better, haven't you?
Yeah, agreed. And I think that I represent quite a big group of people who are earnestly, desperately wanting to be part of the solution, but a bit clumsy at it, quite frankly.
Clumsy is the word. Clumsy.
Yeah, I'm massively clumsy.
Yeah, proper malcoordinated.
But where you can help, and all of us can help, by insisting that the solution involves everybody. Yeah. Because when one of your questions you said, well, we need to sit on the side until, that's not going to solve it at all. If anything, it's going to make it worse. So being involved to help create that more diverse future is, I think, something that we all need and want and are fighting for.
Lucy, can I hit you with another clumsy example? And I hope this conversation may not go well, in which case we can always edit it out. So at the Royal London, and I really hope they don't mind me saying this, but our theatre crew, the theatre staff, are a group of extremely high-functioning theatre nurses, the majority of whom are Filipinos, and they have grown over time. They're now a really tight-knit family of, not family is the wrong word, but they are a tight-knit group, very high-functioning, and a frank pleasure to work with. But they are predominantly Filipino. And is that a problem? Because it's not particularly diverse when you look within that team, but when you look within the hospital, it's a sign of success. But and yet they've all kind of gravitated to it together for obvious reasons. And boy, they work well together. But is that something we should be flagging, highlighting, or not?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that question, actually, Pete. I think that there is obviously, there is situations in all, in lots of different areas where that will happen, where you see groupings of people who work together, and they may have come together because, they might say, this is a really nice work environment. They know people, they say, go for this job. I think back to the point around the recruiting process, if you actually had a situation whereby you could see that there was discrimination happening in the recruitment to that team on the basis that you had to fit a particular type to get into that team, I think that is genuinely a problem. If actually that's not the case, and there is other safeguards in place that mean that team are not being, not inclusive of other people, or that it's not causing problems, then I think that it may be that is okay. I think in a situation in a theatres team, like you said, you will have a wider pool of diversity anyway. I've worked with that team closely, and I know the kind of broader team are diverse. So I think, to me, that's a situation of, are the right safeguards being put in place so that it's not a discriminatory practice? Yep. Is it causing other problems? But ultimately, the aim would be to make sure that it's within a diverse and inclusive environment overall.
And also, it's good because my Filipino is coming along a treat.
He knows all the rude words.
Kumusta ka? Mabuti.
What does that mean?
It just means, hello, how are you? Nice to see you. Nothing offensive.
Are you sure?
Mabuti. No. But it's interesting. They are high functioning teams, exactly as you say. But I think that it's interesting because, but your argument's it's a slightly different argument, because NHS trusts are actively going to the Philippines to recruit people.
And could they be a higher functioning team as well if they were more diverse? So to that point we were discussing before, is there an opportunity? You see them and you see they're high functioning and they operate together well, but actually, if they were more diverse, could they be even more high functioning, or
And
what,
the research
what
would
else?
say
do-
yes.
Hani, groupings. I'd like to move away from that example, but where people cluster together from different nationalities, different cultures, maybe different sexual proclivities, all coming together because they feel a kind of a natural union with each other, operating well together. They kind of create their own critical mass in that one area. Is that something corporations have to be wary of, or?
I mean, for me, what people decide to do is their own choices, and that's fine. But for me, if you're deciding that diverse and inclusive teams as a strategy is more successful, then you have to pursue that strategy. Now, what people do in their own time to pursue their own benefits, there are a lot of culture affinity. People, if they like football, they gravitate to football. And we're not here to tell people what to like or not to like, who to spend time. That's not the objective at all. The objective is to say that based on the research, based on understanding that if we look like the world we live in, insights are better from a customer perspective, innovation is better served, we become more competitive, the culture is more fun, you learn more. I can tell you, when I reflect on my memories of when I had been part of diverse teams, I've been lucky because I've had that opportunity many, many times. I look back at these moments, I don't just remember the work piece of it. I remember learning about the culture, about the food, about the experiences, and I'm a better person today because of these opportunities. So I'm not here to tell people what to do or how to do it. I'm here to say that if we're going to create a business that's more successful, being diverse and being inclusive is a strategic imperative, and it's something we will pursue and do because it makes us better as people, but more importantly, more successful business people also.
And I totally agree with that. I guess my point is that, I guess my point is that, what is my point?
Like, I'll give you an example to your point.
Yeah, go on.
I at one point I had a boss who comes up to me. He was not spending enough time with me, and he was telling me that the reason why he's spending more time with someone else is because he's very passionate about the Premier League, and he'll be able to talk more about the Premier League with another person. And I laughed because I said, well, other than maybe discounting me because of anything you in your head, believe it or not, I know more about the Premier League than that person by tenfold. But I wasn't even given a chance to be part of that circle because people thought, he doesn't know about the Premier League. So for me, that's where the issue is. So I'm not against people gravitating towards interest. I mean, people gravitate to interest across the board. Could be sports, could be culture, could be music, could be food, and that's okay. But it's about not deciding who can qualify based on their name or how they look or...
Yeah. I guess my point was that we are human beings. We're all looking to be in a club. We're all looking for like-minded people to join a gang. We tend to form gangs, group up, and so creating a diverse culture when actually our nature is not to do that is an uphill journey. Is that true or not?
Well, if it was easy, we would not be having to talk about this.
Yeah. We wouldn't need policies. We wouldn't have action.
I can tell you, this is not something that naturally happens on its own.
That's what I'm saying.
I hear you loud and clear. But it's, again, when I go back to saying, if you're putting a team together, putting a team exactly like you is easy because you know how they like to work, what their interests are. And there's that early piece where it's definitely easier. But what you're missing out on is having a lens towards the whole rest of the world, having a chance to build a team that can help you grow personally and professionally, having a team that will be more innovative, more competitive. And I think that's the true joy of life. When you look back and saying, okay, it took harder to bring it together, but I would not do it any other way.
And the other thing that will allow you to do is to attract even more of the best people to your group or company, and to retain them. That's the key thing, isn't it? Because if you don't feel valued, you're going to move on.
Yeah, and I would add to that as well in that you probably would look at me and wouldn't necessarily put me in the field of orthopedics. So before I came to work with you guys, I wouldn't necessarily have been the first candidate that you thought, she's going to really thrive in the orthopedic world and enjoy it and feel part of the club. That was absolutely my experience.
But I'll tell you one thing. In talking to a lot of people in different industries, I think being in healthcare, especially in your space, is maybe the best place to be, because I'll tell you one thing. The one thing that crashes all stereotypes, if someone needs amazing surgeon to help them, I'll tell you, they wouldn't care where you're from. They wouldn't care how you look. If they know that you're the best at what you do, they're going to be with you. So I think it's a bit easier to start building more diverse teams, because in healthcare, some of the stereotypes, I'm not saying they're all gone, but when it comes to excellence, I've never heard someone telling me, I just need someone with a certain name to treat me. Like maybe there are people like as crazy, but outside healthcare, you'll be shocked. There's more, it's more in their people's mind than you would think in healthcare. So I think you have a head start that can help you really make a change.
Should we round up there? Pete, I'm going to round us off now with a quote from the BOA Diversity and Inclusion Strategy. Trauma and orthopedics is a challenging and rewarding career, but its future depends on attracting and retaining the best applicants, nurturing the talents of all its members, and delivering care through a workforce that better reflects the diverse population it serves.
Beautiful.
Happy with that?
That's a mission statement.
Done. So just to finish up, we've got some... we were talking about OrthoHub merchandise basically for the whole of the podcast. And we've got some OrthoHub branded keep cups for you.
Thank you very much.
We're very grateful to you for coming as guests.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful. Really appreciate you both making the time.
Thanks very much.
Annie, you've come a long way. Lucy, you've come back a mile. But it's been great having you. It's been good to see you again. And Pete, who's going to be our next guest?
Sitombo. Yeah, Chief of Trauma in Cape Town and orthopedic trauma, and he was with us for 6 months or so. Came over and visited us and worked as a consultant alongside us, and he was extraordinarily good value, and he's a real big hitter in South Africa. He's a huge deal, and I've got some cracking stories about Sitombo, so those will come out on the next podcast. So with that, let's have a sound effect. Done. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great.
Ooh.